Evening, everyone. Welcome. It's nice to see so many of you joining us this evening. My name is Alexandra Paolino. I'm a consultant dermatologist at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital and the St John's Institute of Dermatology. And it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's webinar on vitiligo. This is our first collaborative patient and public involvement event from Derm Academy, delivered in partnership with the Vitiligo Society and Vitiligo Support UK. Tonight, we're going to be exploring the future of vitiligo treatments, the social and emotional impact of the condition, and we're also going to hear directly from a patient about their journey. To begin with, we're going to start with presentations from our three speakers, followed by a question and answer session where we'll be joined by representatives from our webinar partners, answering questions raised by you, the audience. There's just a few things for me to mention before we start. To help with the background noise, all of the attendee microphones and cameras have been turned off by default. So you can see and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. Having said that, we really want to hear from you all. So please use the question and answer button, which is normally found at the bottom of the screen, to type in your questions at any point during the webinar. We'll do our best to collect all the questions and answer as many as possible in the time that we have available. Also, if you'd like to answer a question anonymously, you can also tick the Ask Anonymously box when you're typing in your questions to us. I'd also like to remind you that this session is going to be recorded so that we can share this webinar with others who couldn't make it tonight. It's going to go on our YouTube channel soon after the event for those who missed it this evening. And then we're also going to be sending you a post-event email where you can give us more in-depth feedback about the event. Finally, before we start, if you'd like to make a donation to support the work of the Vitiligo Society or Vitiligo Support UK, the details are on their websites, and you can also see links and QR codes, which you would have seen on the slides before we started, and we'll also be showing them again at the end of the evening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. John Ferguson. He's a consultant dermatologist with specialist expertise in vitiligo, phototherapy and photobiology. He leads the tertiary vitiligo service here at St John's Institute of Dermatology, which was established in 2017 to ensure that patients have access to the very best care. In 2020, he also founded a vitiligo registry and bioresource project, which has created a really important platform for translational and clinical research. He's also principal investigator for an international clinical trial in vitiligo, which really reflects his commitment to trying to enhance the evidence base and treatment possibilities for people with the condition. So as the landscape of vitiligo treatment continues to evolve, we're delighted to have Dr. Ferguson talk to us today. Thank you, John. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Ali. Yeah, and it's a real honor to be asked to come and talk to all of you about vitiligo. I'm slightly deviating from the title that I was given, and just to try and make it a little bit different, I'm going to try and tell you 5 things that you might not know about vitiligo. And I'm conscious that this audience, you guys probably do know already quite a lot about vitiligo, so I hope I'm not telling you lots of things that you already know, and that this is some novel information in here as well. It's not meant to be an exhaustive talk, so it's kind of, you know, I'm not trying to cover everything, but hopefully you can ask some questions if there are things that we haven't covered at the end. Right, so these are my conflicts of interest. So I do work with some of the drug companies and have had given them consulting support and had some research support from some of them. I do have a company that is setting up home phototherapy as well. So just a very quick introduction about vitiligo, which I know probably doesn't need a huge introduction to all of you guys. So vitiligo is a skin condition that is characterized by depigmented patches that are flat, and it has this significant quality of life impairment for many patients. It affects about 0.5% of people in the UK and across the world too. It has a roughly equal male-female sex ratio, although in general in clinics we often see slightly more women than men. It can come on at any age, but about a quarter of patients develop vitiligo before the age of 10. It often runs in families, and it's often associated with other immune problems like thyroid disease, like diabetes, like eczema, like pernicious anemia. So Ali kindly mentioned the vitiligo service that we set up here at St. John's. It's grown quite a lot since it was just me in 2017. And we're really lucky to have Mark with us, who's going to speak also tonight as our clinical psychologist, who offers really important support to a lot of our patients. We have a specialist nurse with us now in clinic, June Rong, who is really important in supporting patients, helping us with medication support and seeing patients with us in clinic. She also liaises with the phototherapy team. We have 2 registrars with us, and we have a clinical trials nursing team as well. The registry we set up in 2021, and we've now got 800 patients in follow-up on the registry. We're doing these phase 3 trials for oral JAK inhibitors, which are really exciting. We're kind of getting through those now, but they're not currently recruiting. But there are trials in the pipeline that are exciting. So hopefully there'll be other trials to recruit to later on this year and in the years to come. So this just gives you a little bit of an idea of what our cohort's like in vitiligo clinic. So we're roughly equal male and female with slightly more women than men, as is often typical in vitiligo clinic. In keeping with our setting in Southwest London and with the nature of vitiligo, we have mostly patients with brown and black skin in our clinic. Most patients have had vitiligo for about 8 years when they make it to see us in clinic, which is, I think, probably too long. You know, it'd be great if patients were able to come and see us sooner after they've got their diagnosis. But I think that reflects how difficult it can be to access care sometimes in the UK. Most patients have quite limited body surface area when they first present to see us, often about 2.25% body surface area. That's about 2¼ hands of vitiligo. But, I think it's important that we are all aware that actually most people do present with only small amounts of vitiligo. And if it's in a very visible place, it doesn't matter if it's a small amount. You should still be seeking care and getting some support and treatment. So let's go through these 5 things you might not know about vitiligo. So the first thing you might not know, so vitiligo is caused by destruction of melanocytes. Now, what are melanocytes? So melanocytes are these funny purple cells that you can see here in this picture, and they sit at the bottom of the epidermis, the upper layer of your skin, and each melanocyte is connected to 10 keratinocytes. And it feeds in little bits of pigment into those 10 keratinocytes, and that drifts up through your skin. And that's what gives your skin its color. Melanocytes are also immune cells, and they're responsible for antigen presentation to T cells. So that means that they have an immune function too. They're not just only producing pigment. And melanocytes are the same cells that, if they proliferate, if you get a whole big bunch of them together growing out of control, cause melanoma skin cancer. Okay. So they're a really important cell type. And you don't just have melanocytes in your skin, you actually also have them in other parts of your body. Melanocytes are in your mouth, in your lips, and in your inside your mouth. They're on the genital skin. You get melanocytes on the back of your eye here, and also in the iris of your eye. You get melanocytes in your ear, and you can see here with this, in this inner part of your ear, and melanocytes are there really acting as an immune cell rather than for pigment production here. You have melanocytes in your brain and in your hair bulbs as well, giving your hair its color. And it follows from that actually, because you've got melanocytes in other parts of your body, actually losing melanocytes in your ears can lead to hearing loss. And actually, this patient here, these are his audiometry results. And this dip here in his audiometry function that you can see on both sides, it represents the kind of classic high frequency hearing loss that you sometimes see with the autoimmune hearing loss that you get associated with vitiligo. So if anyone listening, if any of you have problems with your hearing, if you have ringing in your ears, or you think you've got problems with your hearing, it's important to get your hearing assessed because it might be a feature of your vitiligo. You could also have problems with your eyes. And actually, when you look into eye disease, actually it's much commoner in vitiligo patients, a whole variety of different things, just from simple dry eye through to uveitis and glaucoma, and lots of other problems with eyes can happen too. So if you have problems with your eyes, get them looked at by an ophthalmologist, and it might be associated with your vitiligo. So third thing that you might not know about vitiligo. So vitiligo can sometimes be triggered by chemicals. And there's one particular chemical that is famous for this. This is monobenzyl ether of hydroquinone. And we use monobenzyl ether of hydroquinone to induce vitiligo in some patients. If you've got very, very extensive vitiligo, sometimes we depigment the residual skin with monobenzyl ether of hydroquinone. And this chemical, what it does is taken up by the melanocytes, those pigment producing cells, and it damages them. And when it damages the melanocytes, that attracts the immune system in, and then this encourages the autoimmune reaction of vitiligo. This is an example of a cause of chemical vitiligo that was quite recently reported in 2021 in the Japanese academic literature, and it describes this cream which contains rhododendron, and this was sold to 800,000 Japanese consumers as a lightening cream, and 2.5% of these patients, a total of 19,606 people, developed vitiligo subsequently. You can see it's in this pattern where this patient's been applying the cream around their neck, and you can see where it's kind of cropped up. And most of the patients who develop vitiligo developed it where they've been applying the cream. And then up to 14% of the patients later develop vitiligo elsewhere. And then when you stop the cream, most of the patients, the vitiligo went away again. But a small number of patients, it continued and was progressive. So it's a really good example. Rhododendron can cause vitiligo, can trigger vitiligo. If you take it away again, most of the time the vitiligo will go away, but for a small number of people, it can be persistent. Another chemical that quite often triggers and aggravates vitiligo is PPD. This is a type of hair dye that's really, really common. Any black or brown hair dye contains PPD. Even henna dyes also contain PPD too. And this chemical often worsens vitiligo. And actually, this is a funny thing that a lot of dermatologists are not even aware of. But actually, once you start examining patients' scalps with vitiligo, even if it looks like they've got really lovely, thick, dark hair, when you look at the scalp, often it's surprising how many patients have actually got complete pigment loss over their scalp. So if you are thinking about dyeing your hair and you have vitiligo, it might be worth thinking again and just considering perhaps not dyeing your hair and just going gray, because it may be one of the things that drives your vitiligo and makes it worse. There's lots of other chemicals that can do this to your skin. I'm not going to go through them all, but PPD is one of them. There are some rubber chemicals can do it. Some disinfectants do it. Various perfumes have been described as doing this. So there's a whole variety of different chemicals that can trigger vitiligo. So sometimes in patients, when we see vitiligo in places where we're maybe not expecting, perhaps in specific areas where a patient's been applying a cream or applying perfume, we do wonder whether chemical vitiligo might be relevant. Okay, so far some slightly worrying news about vitiligo. We've told you about hearing loss, about eye problems, told you about chemical vitiligo. So let's try and see if we can cheer everyone up a little bit. Are there any benefits to having vitiligo? And actually, well, interestingly, it does turn out that there are some benefits to having vitiligo, perhaps. And I know it's difficult to imagine for many of the people watching this has been a really negative experience for them, but if you happen to get vitiligo, as this graph shows, it does make you less likely to get skin cancer. This dashed line that you see, the top line, that's the control group, 60,000 controls from GP practices. And then the red line are the vitiligo patients. And then here on the y-axis, you've got cumulative incidence of new diagnosis of skin cancer. And then this is years. So over a 10-year period, patients diagnosed with vitiligo, this red line, they are much less likely to be diagnosed with skin cancer than the control group. And that's really, really interesting. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get skin cancer, but it does mean that perhaps patients with vitiligo are a bit less prone to skin cancer, a bit less likely to get skin cancer than the background population, which is really interesting and might help encourage people with phototherapy, with enjoying being in the sun, and hopefully getting better repigmenting. You're not at an increased risk of skin cancer if you've got vitiligo. If anything, you're at a reduced risk. Now, you can still get melanoma if you have vitiligo. And actually, interestingly, patients who get melanoma can also get vitiligo as a secondary effect. And about 10% of patients with metastatic melanoma develop vitiligo. And when they do, it's normally a good prognostic sign. And actually, people who get vitiligo who have melanoma are more likely to have a good outcome. So, that is one scenario where having vitiligo is a good thing. So, final thing that you might not know about vitiligo. So, I think now is a good time to have vitiligo, even though it might not feel good and it's a bad diagnosis to be given. If you had to choose a time to have vitiligo, I think we would all choose to have it now, because for many, many years, vitiligo was, when I was a junior doctor, a very neglected condition. It was really treated as a cosmetic problem. We were taught that really was kind of less important than other skin problems, and there was very little treatment possible, and patients were often discouraged from treating themselves. And I think nowadays, everyone kind of knows, and we're pushing out the message much more, that vitiligo is not just a cosmetic problem. It's just as important as other skin problems. And nobody should get away with telling you that there are no treatments or that it's not worth treating. Lots of new treatments are being developed. And, patients, you should all be encouraged to treat your vitiligo if you want to do so. And you should encourage other people with vitiligo to try and seek treatment too. And, that it's also good news that, we're not alone in our excitement about vitiligo here. If you look at the papers published in the academic literature about vitiligo over the last 20, 30 years, the last 5-10 years, there's been an unbelievable uptick in vitiligo publications, a huge increase in the annual rate of publications. And this just means that lots and lots of people, scientists and doctors all around the world, are taking a real interest in vitiligo and studying it and trying to work out how we can make the condition better. And that is good news if you've got this problem. And actually, one of the things that's been discovered through this work that's been done are these topical JAK inhibitors that everyone's heard about, the ruxolitinib cream. These are creams that work by suppressing an immune pathway that is active in vitiligo patients. And it was studied in this huge study, 674 patients, comparing the Opzelura, the ruxolitinib cream, twice a day with a placebo cream. And it got some pretty good results. After a year of applying the cream, 50% of patients with vitiligo on their face had a 70% improvement, 75% improvement in their facial repigmenting after a year. And on the body, they had a 50% chance of repigmenting. So that of up to 50%. So that's not a miracle. That's not amazing results, but it's much, much better than any of the creams that we have available as single agents. So it's a really remarkable step forward. And who knows how much better this will be when you add in phototherapy and you add in antioxidants and the other things that we use. So this is really exciting. We hope that this will be available through the NHS this year. Although it was rejected by NICE last year, I'm hopeful still that there is a really good chance that through the negotiations between the company and the government, it will become available this year, but we'll see. And beyond ruxolitinib, there are so many other drugs being studied and being looked at. And actually, it's extremely exciting. This is a list. I'm not going to go through all of this, of all the different molecules that are kind of currently in development for vitiligo. And now, not all of these will come to fruition. They will not all become treatments that you can try. But I think many of these may do. And it just gives you an idea how much is happening and how fast. There's a real change in vitiligo management coming. And it's an exciting time to be treating patients with vitiligo. And hopefully, it's going to be a much easier time from now on to have vitiligo, and you'll be able to have much more hope that you will get successful treatment. Here are just some animals with vitiligo. We're not the only creatures that get it. I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have if that's appropriate now. We can do it later on if that's what we're meant to be doing.
Thanks, John. I think people will have lots of questions. I think what we'll do, if everyone can just type them into the Q&A box, we'll have lots of questions to ask you at the end as part of the panel discussion. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Tanka Shapova. So Tanka is a mother of two. She works full-time as a bar manager in London, and she's had vitiligo since her early 20s, and she's currently part of a clinical research trial under the care of Dr. Ferguson, and she's kindly agreed to share her experiences with us. So hi, Tanka, over to you now to show.
Hi, everyone. I would just like to share my vitiligo journey so far. So I first discovered little white spots in my early 20s. I didn't know what it was at the time. I never paid any attention. There wasn't any change in the condition. They weren't changing. They weren't increasing. They weren't appearing in any other place of the body. So between the age of 20 and 30, I never even sought medical help because I just didn't know what it was. So up until the age of between 20 and 30, I was very comfortable. It wasn't visible at all. It was just like few white dots here and there. Up until the age of 30, when I got pregnant with my first child, then the spots they were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's when I decided to contact my GP. And a few months later, I was referred to a dermatologist. I was then offered protopic creams to use for 6 months, but there was no visible change in my condition. Then I was also offered phototherapy for 3 times a week, but due to my lifestyle and time constraints and other life commitments, I couldn't commit to the phototherapy offered. So then the dermatologist at the time, she just said, there is no treatment, there is no any other treatment. I just need to accept my condition. I just need to live with it and just to protect myself when I'm on the sun. So then it felt a bit like terminal diagnosis, but then I just said to myself, if there is nothing else that can be done, that's it, I'll move on with my life. Then 5 years later, when I was 35, I got pregnant again for second time with my son. That's when literally overnight I lost about 30% of my pigment. It just happened so rapidly, I couldn't believe it. That's when people really started staring at me, and that's when I felt really down and a bit depressed, especially at the time. It was during COVID. It was very uncertain times. And the COVID summer, I remember, it was really hot. So I couldn't even wear the clothes I used to wear, as people would just stare and ask me questions. And I just felt really body conscious. That's when I joined vitiligo support groups, as I just felt really alone out there. So I just needed to find other people like me. But then again, the time was passing by. It was COVID. I was with a newborn at home and with another one that I had to homeschool. So I just left it there and then. I did try some self-tanning creams, but it wouldn't work. The products would just stain my clothes. I looked worse, actually. I looked more orange. So then I said, no, I'm just going to stop. Up until last year, I was referred to John Ferguson, and he suggested I go on to a clinical trial. To be quite frank, I was really scared at first, as I just didn't know. I mean, I felt a bit like an experiment uh, I just wasn't sure what to do. I was just a bit scared. But then I've done my research. I've read more about the possible drug and the possible benefits of me being on the trial. So I just decided, why not? So I've joined the trial. I've started it in 2020, well, at the beginning of 2025 here at St. Thomas's Hospital. Um, Everyone's been really helpful and friendly, and everyone's answered all my questions. Uh, I finally, after 15 years, no, 20 years of having the condition, I finally feel like I'm in control of it and I'm doing something positive. And yeah, I'm happy that I've joined the research. So that's the first picture on the left that's how my arm looked before the treatment. The one in the middle is a few months into the treatment. And the final picture is that's how my arm looks now. So my final thoughts, if you've been just newly diagnosed, try to openly talk about your condition, join any support groups, and don't worry, you're not alone there. And like John Ferguson said, now is the best time to be diagnosed with vitiligo. Yeah, that's all I can say, really. Hope my journey has been helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tanka.
Answer session. We've got 3 panelists for this part, but also but all of our speakers will be able to answer your questions too. I want to introduce Natalie Ambersley. She's a trustee and director at the Vitiligo Society, which is a charity that's dedicated to raising awareness and supporting those living with vitiligo. She joined the society in 2017 and she plays a key role in shaping its strategic direction, building partnerships, and amplifying the voices of those affected by the condition. And Natalie herself was diagnosed with vitiligo at just 3 years old. We also have Emma Rush. She's set up the charity Vitiligo Support UK to provide healthy advocacy and support to patients with vitiligo, their families, and their friends. The charity's been involved in research, it provides psychological support for patients, and has provided patient perspective on some clinical guidelines. Emma also has vitiligo, and she understands the journey that people with vitiligo go on and the challenges that it can bring. We also have Sarah Copperwheat. Sarah's an experienced dermatology nurse with specialist expertise in phototherapy and systemic medication monitoring. She's a trustee for the British Dermatological Nursing Group, and she plays a key role in advancing dermatology nursing practice and education. So thank you all 3 of you. So we've got quite a lot of questions to go through. So the first questions I'm going to talk about that we've had come through are surrounding referral pathways for treatment. So Emma, can I pose this to you if that's okay? So we've had one person say that my GP says there's no treatment. How can I get referred to a specialist clinic to discuss my options?
So one of the specific things that we do as a charity, as a result of being involved in the British Association of Dermatologists guidelines for managing people with vitiligo, is help people advocate for themselves in front of their GPs. And in fact, that's also supported not only by the BAD guidelines, but it's actively supported by the Primary Care Dermatology Society. So then you're kind of talking GP's language when you use something of that nature. So this script is available to you for free as a member if you join our Facebook support group. And there's also the opportunity within our Facebook support group to ask questions, hear other people's experiences, and also get advice from us. So John spoke quite interestingly about people being much more open to treating vitiligo patients. And we have these 2 fantastic specialist clinics in England that treat vitiligo patients. But I think that unwillingness to treat is still quite endemic amongst GPs. And so I think it's really important that you get some help if you're concerned about talking to your GP about your vitiligo. Just get some help by either chatting to people within the group or asking for a specific script to give you that access.
Thank you, Emma. That's really
Sorry, and just also be prepared. Unfortunately, waiting lists in dermatology are chronically long across the country. So you may want a referral if you live locally to John's clinic to somewhere like London and a tertiary centre, where the waiting lists might be a bit more manageable for you if you're in a state of anxiety about your skin.
Thank you, Emma. That's really helpful. So the next question I have, we're going to change it up a little bit and talk about treatment. We've had someone talk about how they've had good experience with phototherapy, but it quickly came back when it stopped. And they're asking if there are any safe home phototherapy units that they can use in the UK. And they're specifically asking about use in children and whether there's any age restrictions on them. So, Sarah, do you think you might be able to answer this one?
Yes. So safe at-home phototherapy units is not something I would be recommending. So it should be done within a registered unit with calibrated machines and treatment protocols adhered to. You can buy machines from Amazon and other shops. You can buy lots of different things, but they're not regulated, they're not controlled, so they shouldn't be used. And children can have phototherapy in a unit. So you can take your child and have phototherapy in a unit supported by healthcare professionals and specialists, but it should all be done under regulated conditions.
Thank you, Sarah. And the next question is for you, John. Does exposure to UVB phototherapy over a long period of time increase the risk of skin cancer versus no phototherapy?
A really important question to kind of address. So, first thing, so narrowband UVB phototherapy is a really safe type of phototherapy. Having 30 treatments of UVB is roughly a bit like going on holiday for a week. So, it's not a hugely dangerous thing to do. But if you do have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of treatments, beyond about 500 treatments, your risk of perhaps non-melanoma type skin cancer does start to perhaps increase a little. I think that's probably mitigated a bit in the vitiligo population, because as we saw in the talk I was kind of giving earlier, there is this reduction in risk if you've got vitiligo. But probably if you have very, very high numbers of treatments, you probably do start to experience some kind of slight increase in your risk again. But you've got to weigh that against the problem that you've got with vitiligo, how serious that is, how much distress that's causing you, and also, of course, your background skin. If you've got brown skin, if you've got dark skin, your risk of getting skin cancer is lower to begin with, and even if it goes up a little bit, will still be very, very low. So it's all about the context of you and your skin, what your background is, how many treatments you've had, but I think overall, narrowband UVB is a safe treatment, and I wouldn't worry about having even 200 or 300 treatments of narrowband UVB at all if I were a patient. Just returning to that question about the home phototherapy, just very briefly, look, there is definitely a gap in the market for home phototherapy, and it's something that we are trying to develop to make it available in a safe way. But Sarah is absolutely right. There are lots and lots of really not safe ways of getting hold of phototherapy equipment and using them, and it being quite dangerous. So one of the reasons why we're trying to develop a safe way of delivering it is because there's so much trouble that comes from using equipment without proper training. And I see lots of patients quite often who come in and say, oh, I bought a machine, but I sort of burnt myself and now I'm kind of frightened of it and I'm leaving it in the corner of the room, which is kind of not great. So we've got to try and work on a safer way of delivering home phototherapy. But yeah, at the moment it's really hard to get hold of safe home phototherapy.
John. I've got a question for Natalie next. This is someone who's written in to say that they really admire Winnie Harlow as a positive role model. Are there any risks of not treating my vitiligo?
Are there any risks of not treating your vitiligo? So is this coming from the perspective that Winnie is someone that people
kind of promotes body positivity?
Yes. So I think there has been a shift. And, there are a lot of people that are still suffering with the condition and struggle daily, you know, and find it difficult navigating day-to-day life with the condition. And, you know, that has been the case for a lot of people, especially people from maybe a slightly older generation. But thankfully, there has been a shift since characters and models like Winnie Harlow have come onto the scene, because they have come and they are showing people that you can live quite confidently with vitiligo and try and be your most authentic self. You know, a lot of the pressures do come from, you know, standardized beauty standards, people we see in society, but with things like social media, we're getting influencers, we're getting people that now can be part of the community that can support each other. So we really are seeing a good shift in people starting to feel a bit more confident and comfortable in their skin. I spent years struggling with vitiligo, especially as a mixed race girl, because my vitiligo is quite prominent. But as soon as characters like Winnie Harlow came onto the scene and social media started to become quite elevated, I realised that there was a really supportive community out there that allows us to support each other. And, you know, you're getting things like, you know, books with children's characters with vitiligo. We've now got Barbie dolls. We've got more stronger children's school resources. So all these things are really contributing to allowing people to really start to embrace their skin. And, you know, I'm quite active on social media, and I do a lot of work in the public space around body positivity. And you really are starting to see the shift in people really starting to be their most authentic self and really kind of celebrate their uniqueness. And I'm hoping that's kind of how we continue, but also supporting those who still do find it quite difficult.
Thank you. And for those who would like to camouflage their vitiligo, are there any skin camouflage clinics around, and how can people find their sort of nearest go-to place to get help with this? So this is both to you, Natalie, and to Emma, if you have anything to add, Emma. So we'll start with you, Natalie, if that's okay.
So Changing Faces are a camouflage clinic. I think it is a case of just contacting them directly. I think you can get their details on their website. But they have a clinic in central London, and I believe they can do demonstrations and help to match you with the correct colour of camouflage that you can use. So yeah, Changing Faces is a great resource to use.
Yes, so Changing Faces is actually nationwide, and you can book into a clinic online as a form on their website. At the moment, there are, again, waiting lists for camouflage appointments, but as a result of it, you do get a letter that you take to your GP, and then you can receive the camouflage products on prescription, which can be an advantage for you. If, for example, you have thyroid disease, you will obviously have a prescription payment exemption. What we found with our membership is that, as Tonka was saying earlier, that camouflage can be a bit difficult to apply. You have to powder it to make sure it stays in place. And a lot of members in our group are talking about using self-tanning products, for example, on body areas particularly, or if on your face you've lost most of your pigment, then self-tan is a really good option for you. And also if you want to, and if you're able to wear makeup, that can also be an option. So that we have a list of the camouflage products people really rate highly, the makeup that people really rate highly, and also the self-tanning products that people have tried and think last well, don't have to be reapplied that often. And again, that's available from us if you join us.
Thank you very much. So we've had a few people ask about the use of antioxidants. Can you tell us what are antioxidants and which ones are the most helpful for vitiligo? John, are you able to answer this?
Sure. Yeah, so we use quite a lot of antioxidants in clinic. There's a really good theory about why they might be useful. You know, we know that stress is one of the things that drives vitiligo, and antioxidants are great at managing stress, at mopping up stress in our skin. There are various different compounds that have been shown to have a benefit for vitiligo patients in different studies. The first one I think was this thing called Polypodium leucotomos, which is a tropical fern. You get that Helio Care, 2 tablets a day was the sort of dose I think for that. And there was a study in the 90s that showed that that was beneficial for some patients, particularly in combination with phototherapy. More recently, a different antioxidant, glycidin B-salt, which is a melon extract, was shown in a study by a French group in the south of France to be beneficial, again, in combination with phototherapy. And it works much better than phototherapy on its own. And ginkgo biloba is the other one that is got some evidence behind it. That is a ginkgo, of course, the tree that you see, there's ginkgo trees all around London. They have these little heart-shaped leaves and that kind of come out of the trunk. And ginkgo, you take 150 milligrams daily. And ginkgo is one of the cheaper ones. I think, the other two are quite expensive. So sometimes if cost is an issue, I recommend ginkgo. But antioxidants, I think, do have a role in treating vitiligo. And a lot of my colleagues around the world who treat vitiligo regularly do recommend antioxidants to all their patients. They have very limited side effect profile. And so they're a great thing to just add in on top of your other treatments.
Thank you, John. So we've had a few people also ask about how do you explain what vitiligo is to other people, and do people have any tips about how to sort of manage questions about the skin? Tanka, you told us a bit about your experiences. Do you want to tell us how you sort of explain what vitiligo is to people who aren't really aware what it is?
I was very anxious at first. I wasn't very comfortable. I was trying to hide my condition for a very long time, especially I work with the general public on a daily basis. And in the summer, everyone sees my hands and face and neck and back of my neck. But I've just decided, like I said, one day I've just accepted it. I just said to myself, I won't be shy about it anymore. I won't be hiding away. So when people ask me, I'm just very open about the condition. I just say, well, it's autoimmune disease. It's not, it's not contagious. You can touch my skin. I don't feel offended. So I feel comfortable talking about it and confident. And some people are just saying, oh, wow, it looks amazing on you. Obviously, they're trying to be friendly and put my mind at ease, but I'm just not shy talking about it anymore. Especially little kids. I have 2 kids myself. I know they're friends. They're even coming to me and touching my skin. So just be open about it and don't shy away.
Yeah, and actually the British Skin Foundation has sort of actually released some new guidelines recently, just talking about how we can explain visible skin conditions to children. And I think they're also a really helpful resource for people, especially perhaps young children who are at school, and maybe sort of extra support about how to talk to their peers about it. Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I really do empathize when my patients with vitiligo say that that they get sort of unwelcome questions, because the nature of having any kind of visible problem, you see, is that unlike other long-term conditions, it sort of makes people feel vulnerable to the mercy of these naive questions and people staring. But I think once sort of something quite similar to sort of what Tanka says, I think is that one helpful strategy is to basically try to be say something short and positive about it, and then to also just change the topic as much as possible. And if you don't want to talk about your vitiligo, try not to. If you're sort of being asked by someone who you're not going to see again, I meet a lot of patients who they decide not to explain. Whereas if they're meeting someone that they see repeatedly, then they might decide to use one of these strategies where they say something positive about it and then change topic and move on. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. I can see Natalie sort of nodding.
Yeah, I agree. And when I used to get asked the question, I used to get very anxious and uncomfortable. I'd get frustrated and feel a real wave of emotions. And sometimes, the questions do feel unwanted. And sometimes the questions can come at the wrong time when you might not even be thinking about vitiligo or wanting to talk about it. But my strategy is just keeping it quite simple. It's called vitiligo. It's an autoimmune condition where my skin loses pigment, and it's harmless and it's not contagious. But I really try to think a bit more positively now, especially as someone who has overcome a lot of challenges with having the condition. And every time someone asks me, I now see it as an opportunity to raise awareness and educate, because, you know, we are here now in a world where we can educate, we can raise awareness, we can connect with people from all over the globe. So I always see it as an opportunity to educate and just give someone else that bit of information, so that when they see someone next time with a condition, they may know exactly what it is.
I think the other thing to add, I think while waiting, is in sort of psychological therapy, people, for example, with acceptance and commitment therapy, can learn to really clarify what matters to them, so that they carry on sort of living their daily life, and don't shy away from the anxiety of, you know, when I go out of the house again, will I be asked more questions about my skin, as a way of trying to keep, you know, things slightly more in perspective, not to minimize the stigma that people do experience, but really sort of having a clear idea of what your goals are, you know, and what's really important to you in the longer term, might help motivate people to carry on, alongside the sort of more behavioral strategies of knowing what to say, or when not to talk about your vitiligo.
The Centre for Appearance Research down at the University of Western England have got some resources for people with visible difference, and one of them is relating to acceptance and commitment therapy. So people might find that useful to access. It's available online. So if you just search for Patient Resources Centre for Appearance Research, you should be able to find that.
And also, just for anybody that has small children with vitiligo, on the Vitiligo Society website, we actually have a really good school support pack, which gives plenty of details on how to explain vitiligo to other children, conversations that you might want to have with teachers. And it's a really great resource that you can download for free on the website.
Thank you, everyone. So thank you, first of all, to our speakers, but also to everyone who's joined this evening. For more information and advice about vitiligo, please do see the NHS resources, but also the Vitiligo Society and Vitiligo Support UK have a huge number of resources for you to access. And again, please do consider making donations to both charities. Thank you all very much, and good evening, everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.